right, and welcome everybody to a new series, part of the show. And wanted to get out in the community a little bit more and talk to more people on a regular basis. Still going to continue with the show, and it's a little more convenient. It's hard to get a hold of some people like my next guest here, who's going to join us. There's a walking tour happening here in Sarnia. It's been happening, and there's one more date coming up, and we wanted to make sure that you knew about it. So we're going to bring on my first guest. His name is Ron RealeSmith, and he is the president of the Sarnia Historical Society, and he is a member of the Sarnia Heritage Committee. Not to be confused with each other, but it happens all the time. How you doing, Ron?
Good. How are you?
Doing fantastic. And this walking tour seems to have great success, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But let's kind of define so people understand the Sarnia Historical Society and the Sarnia Heritage Committee, and the fact that it's confusing because you're on both.
That's fair. No, I get that a lot, and so the Heritage Committee is a committee of the city of Sarnia, and they've been around for quite some time, and I think almost 40 years. And the premise is that they address buildings that have to do with heritage designation,
right?
And so I mean, there's lots of other things they do. They partake in other events and whatnot. But a big portion of it is people in the community that have a home that they want to have heritage designation applied to it, or even city infrastructure that wants to have heritage designations applied to it. And dealing with the legality of that. And a lot of that's done through Max Williams, who I've gotten to know really well over the last 3 years, and he's a fantastic individual and a great asset for the city. So he does a lot of that work, very knowledgeable in the legality of it, and it helps citizens kind of navigate the administration of all of that. Okay,
well, it's been good crowds coming out to the walking tour, and I haven't been able to get to one yet. Unfortunately, I'm going to miss the next one too, but I have talked to many people, and people who've lived here for quite some time, and some that are new to Sarnia, some that are just traveling through Sarnia. There's really quite a mix of different kind of people that are attending these tours.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it started last year. It was rebooted and through the Sarnia Heritage Committee, and we did it through a student. We had a student by the name of Simon. He was from Toronto. Great young talent, and I believe he's back in Toronto this year now. And though they come to the community, they're not from the area, and they essentially have to learn everything about what they're going to do for the walking tour. And last year was kind of a reboot to it. I've only been with the Heritage Committee for going on 4 years now. And I believe that back in the day, there's some folks on the Heritage Committee that have been on there for 30 years. Even Pat McLean, who recently just passed away, she's been on there for 30 years. And she talked about walking tours back in the day and how she was really excited to see it rebooted. And it was a real shame because, she just missed the first one here. And I know she was really excited to see it come back. So the new student that's with the planning department from the city of Sarnia, her name is Emma Franklin, and she's been absolutely fantastic as well. And something happened with the other student. They had to, unfortunately, leave, or something happened. And so Emma was kind of thrown in the mix, and she was given less than a week to prepare, and she's done an absolutely fantastic job.
Oh, great stuff. We'll continue on the conversation in just a moment, Ron. I just want to acknowledge a couple of people. Corinder, who is from the United Kingdom, who is watching us right now. And we have our friend Dom, who is here in Sarnia. Hello to you as well. If you've got some questions and you're watching this show, there is a link in the description. Make sure you're watching from that link, or you're watching from the Show with David Burrows page. We are simulcasting not just around here, we're all over the world. We're in the United Kingdom, Australia, and the United States, Ireland, and South Africa. So in order for us to see your comments, and if you want to talk to Ron, make sure you click on that link, and you're watching there. Ron, let's talk a little bit about money.
Sure.
And I think there's times, and you and I have seen it in this city, and I'm sure it happens in other cities. There can be a debate on the importance of history and
100%.
and how much money do we spend on saving things and restoring things. And
Sure.
what's your, I mean, I'm pretty sure where you're going to come from, but where do you come from with all of that, and why is it? Let's tell everybody why it's important, because I'm with you on this.
Well, I think it's important to speaking of history, I mean, to do a history lesson on why we are where we are in Sarnia. There was a major tornado that tore through downtown Sarnia in 1953 and really damaged a lot of our buildings, even our previous city hall, and even the Imperial Theater. And so we talk about that a lot on the tour, actually, about how this tornado really kind of changed the layout of downtown. A lot of historic buildings, and there wasn't the insurance the way there was back then. And when after the tornado happened, and they were trying to figure out what to do about it, a lot of people didn't have the money to restore these buildings, so they were knocked down, and either nothing was replaced. That's why you have a lot of vacant parking lots in the downtown, or just walked away and abandoned, essentially. And so you see some that are run down. But I mean, in the last few years, we've seen a real resurgence of people being interested in their heritage and their history, and wanting to know where Sarnia came from. Sarnia, for a lot of people that don't understand, is very prominent at the turn of the 19th century. The second prime minister of Canada is from Sarnia, and you think about where we were, like, we're such a young country at that time, and it wasn't an accident that the second prime minister was from Sarnia. It was because there was so much going on here, especially with the petrochemical industry, and we were the center of the universe as far as North America went at that time, because we had struck oil, and there was an oil boom here, and there a lot of smart people showed up here to say, like, what can we do with this icky black substance? And essentially, I mean, it powered the next 100+ years, right? That we're having a renaissance on innovation and technology around renewables. That was going on 100 years ago, where we were trying to get away from steam and horse-powered things, and trying to move on to gasoline, and a lot of that happened here and was developed here. And then furthermore from there, with the First and Second World War, the war effort, it took a lot of the petrochemical industry to help fight a war. It's not just boots on the ground. There's a lot of innovation that went onto it, and a lot of that production came from Sarnia. So Sarnia is very rich in history, and so I think what's happened, though, in the last, to get back to your original question there about heritage and history buildings of that nature, is there isn't an education where like, so for instance, the house that I'm currently sitting in, it's 125 years old, and this is my home, and like, you may own it, you may live in the downtown Sarnia, but when someone says, oh, well, you should make your house a heritage home, and then right away people say, oh, no, the bureaucracy, I wouldn't be allowed to paint it the way I want, and I wouldn't be able to do this, and that is absolutely not the case. And so it's more of a conversation that you're having with the city, and has to do with a lot of pride in your home, and to say to yourself, this thing in my home I want to recognize as heritage, and I want to make sure that the next homeowner that gets the house, they have a heritage mindset and space that says, I'm gonna go the extra mile for this particular piece in my home, and honor the heritage from our past.
Yeah, and it's the history. I mean, it helps us to see so much that's changed. Just in, I mean, fashion's a really good example of history, and houses is a good example. And I've seen in other cities. I go down to London quite a bit. And down there, their heritage homes have a sign that hangs out front and says, "This is a heritage home." And
right,
there's a lot of pride in that, right?
Oh, 100%. And so putting my heritage committee hat back on, there's been a lot of people getting in touch with us and saying, "Hey, we want to make our house a heritage home," and it's exciting. Like, I have a friend that just reached out to me, who bought their house specifically because it had heritage aspects, and they were in the process of making it a heritage home. There's a resurgence going on in the downtown of Sarnia. People want to be here now. I'm seeing a lot of homes being fixed up, And there are these beautiful old homes, and a lot of people that are moving into them, they're not thinking modern. They're thinking, I want to make it look like it did 100 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, and there is there's a lot of history here in Sarnia, and as you were talking about, and I think the fact that we're border to Michigan might have contributed to some of that, because we've got Thomas Edison was across the way, and we've also got we've got the old the old CN tunnel that was
100%.
with
I mean, you think about the CN tunnel,
right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the CN tunnel is well over 100 years ago built, and the technological phenom that was at the time, I mean, it still is. There's not too many of them in the world, for that matter, and the fact that one of the first ones was ever done here just speaks volumes to what we were all about back then.
Yeah, and even the new one. Well, I say the new one. The new one's now
almost 20 years old.
It's 20 years, right?
Yeah.
The Excalibur that came from Germany, was brought here in pieces and put together, and and just our railway system in this area that has brought contributed to the industry that is here, the chemical industry, and our downtown core. And we've had some exciting things happen down here too, as far as bank robbers and
so we'll talk about a few of the stops that we go on. So the first place, we start at City Hall. So the next tour is next Wednesday, or this coming Wednesday, at 6 p.m. in front of City Hall, and we talk about the location. We talk about the Kenwick building and what it was before there, and how it used to be a dance hall, and acts as big as Louis Armstrong came. And for those young kids listening right now, like, Louis Armstrong in his day was as big as Michael Jackson was. Imagine it's the 80s, and the moonwalk just was invented, and all of a sudden Michael Jackson goes on the radio and is like, I'm coming to Sarnia, like
Patsy Cline and Brenda Lee and all.
Yeah, huge names. Yeah. And so people will come from all over to come to Sarnia just to partake in our nightlife and all those festivities. But the next stop is, so we leave downtown and we walk in between, where Limbo Lounge is now.
Yeah.
So Limbo Lounge is the previous location of City Hall. Yeah, there's actually,
I didn't know that.
Right, that's actually her right outside of the location there. So if you flip the camera around, that is Limbo Lounge, and that actually used to be the old City Hall. And so it was damaged in the tornado in 1953. And so the police station used to be in the basement, and City Hall was on the main level. And then I believe it was like a hall you could rent out was on the top level.
Yeah.
So we talk about that a little bit. We talk about the Bayside Mall. We talk about how it was the Eaton's Mall, and Eaton's Sarnia has relation to the Toronto Eaton's Mall. It's very famous. And so we talk about the rise of the mall and the demise of the mall, and what's next for the mall. We talk about that a little bit. And then we leave that location, and then we walk past Imperial Theater, and then we stop where the Tin Fiddler is now. And we stop in that crevice, and we have a conversation about the Imperial Theater, and it's one of the oldest theater groups in I think she says in the world. It's got such fantastic history there, and so we talk about how it received extensive damage in the 1950s through the tornado. It changed ownership, and then it had major restorations done with a loan through the city of Sarnia for $600,000 in interest-free loan, and talks about what that did for them, and they just paid it off recently. And then we leave there, and the picture that you just showed there, where people were taking pictures of a plaque, that is the Jack Lewis Memorial plaque that's right there. That was erected by the Sarnia Historical Society just last year, the last weekend of September, for Peacekeepers Day. Right. So it's, honestly, it was very emotional for me to take that picture right there. So what we do is we have we say before we walk by, we say, make sure you stop and read the plaque, and everybody stops and reads the plaque. And so what that plaque illustrates is it's actually the marker of where Constable Jack Lewis, he was a Sarnia police officer that died in 1936. And so, and he was murdered, and I'm actually not going to say the person's name that murdered him, because the Historical Society really believes that we should forget the other guy's name and really focus on Jack Lewis and his name and his family and his sacrifice to our community. So we really go out of our way to, we do tell the story of the other person and the political mayhem that was about him getting released from prison and essentially being a bit of a shyster, and comes to Sarnia and he meets his demise. He is killed by 3 Sarnia police officers, and Constable Jack Lewis, unfortunately, is shot and killed in that when he tries to rob the bank. And so we talk about how that plaque came to be. Now, the plaque did come to be because the Lewis family actually approached myself at the premiere of the movie that was about the person whom I'm not going to name. There was a movie about his life, and I mean, he is the celebrity, right? I mean, it's such a fascinating story, but it is also very tragic that he did murder and kill a Sarnia police constable. And so the family actually approached me and they challenged me, and they said, how come everybody cares about the other guy and nobody knows about Jack Lewis? And I said, well, I said, like, well, I had nothing to do with the movie, but the movie was a fantastic, very well done movie. But it's an interesting story, and it is a story that gets told, and it's part of our history, whether we like to admit it or not. But I took up the challenge. I said, you know what, you're absolutely right. We need to make this community aware of the name Jack Lewis. And so that's what we set out to do. And we wrote a letter to the government and asked them. So there was $1,000 bounty, I'll say, a reward for this notorious gangster, and for dead or alive. And so the thinking was that, well, he was killed in Sarnia, and we'd like to get that money and give it to the Lewis family. And the government of the day said, well, no, the person died in serving. He was doing his job. He was a police officer. That was his job, and so you're not going to get that money. So it never went paid for over 80 years. So we decided to write to the government and say, hey, we'd like to collect that $1,000 minus the $18,500 in interest it's incurred. We don't charge them that, though. And so we just asked for the $1,000. They wrote back to us and said, no, unfortunately, like, we're not going to do that. So we were interviewed by local journalists. I even think that you had done an interview with us as well about it. And we were just saying how we were disappointed that they weren't going to provide the money. And all of a sudden, within 24 hours of those stories going live, we received phone calls from the community. And before I knew it, we had about $8,000 raised.
Wow.
And we were able to erect that plaque last year. But then we wanted to go a step further. We wanted to dedicate the plaque. So we asked the Sarnia Police Service and the association to show up. And about 60 police officers showed up and lined the street, and they paid tribute to him. And then we invited the Lewis family, and over 100 of them showed up. And it was a beautiful moment. And so it was important to do that. It is important to respect your past and to pay homage to those that went before you. And that's what we try to do with that plaque. And so for me to see that picture, there was over 200 people on that tour where that picture was taken just on Friday. And it was very emotional for me to see 200 people stop, read, reflect, and to know Constable Jack Lewis and the sacrifice he did for the community.
Yeah. And that's another, there's so much importance to history. I mean, we could do a 2-hour documentary on the importance of history in not just in our local cities and our countries, but it starts at the local level, right? And progresses from there, or at least I guess that's the hope. And the growth of it, and seeing the growth of it, actually, even over the last 5 years, I would say, with the Sarnia Historical Society and the Heritage Committee. When we talk about, we go back and talk about skits and the opening of the time capsule there as well. That was a big day, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we packed skits out. It was a beautiful thing to see. So many people care about that building, care about the history. I mean, there were some great artifacts in it, so that was exciting to see, and yeah, it's just awesome to see the community come together. And I just feel, you can feel it, like you've lived in Sarnia a long time, all my life. The sense of pride that has come about in the last few years, I've just been so honored to be a part of it. It's an absolute privilege to tell the history of this fine city, and it's just great it's one thing for a person to get up there and want to talk about it, but it's another when, I think by the end of this tour, we're probably going to have upwards of 800 people that have come out for these walking tours. And it's just a true testament to the resurgence in it. And it's fantastic, but people have to show up. They have to be interested.
Yeah. And again, not just to the people who live here, but I know there's people from out of town that are passing through.
Sure. Yeah.
And, telling stories is how we learn from each other. And maybe we can connect other communities and go, oh, maybe we should try that in our community, or maybe we could show them, it's just that whole collaboration.
I agree with you. Yeah.
And it's nice to see. Now the Historical Society, they meet regularly. Can people come out and be a part of it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so the Historical Society, the Sarnia Historical Society, we have a board, and we meet. We try to meet monthly, and like the board does, we make decisions about what we're doing.
Yeah.
As far as our membership goes, we don't have a paid membership, but we have over 900 people that are signed up to our newsletter.
Nice.
And that's how we keep in touch with our membership. And then whenever there's an event going on, for instance, the walking tour, we'll send a note to our members and say, you should support this. So essentially what we do is the Sarnia Historical Society, we just try to celebrate history. So if there's something going on, like a heritage walking tour being done by the city, we just want to get behind it, and we want to say, do this thing, go to this thing. We lend on our social media, our Facebook page, we have over 3,000 people that like our page and follow what we do, and so we leverage that. We take pictures of the tour, we promote the tour, because that's what we're all about. We're all about promoting local history. So we don't care who's doing it. We just, if it's history and it looks fun, we just want to celebrate it.
Yeah.
And so we've had lots of collaborations.
You're not collecting artifacts though, are you?
Yeah. So
I know that's hard. I'm bringing that up for a reason, because I know a lot of people go, here, I've got this, here, have this. And I know you'd want to embrace that, but there is a bit of a storage issue there, right?
Yeah. So the backstory on that and what's happened is that the Sarnia Historical Society has existed for over 40 years.
Yeah.
But when I got involved just shy of 4.5 years ago, the Historical Society was on the verge of going defunct. And because the previous president passed away, and the board was getting older, and actually, do you know where the refined food is downtown?
Yeah.
That's actually the location of their museum, and it was closed all the time, and it was by appointment only. And so they just, I don't know, they just ran out of steam, and I mean, that happens.
Sure.
And so a lot of the artifacts, 2,400 of them, were put in storage for a few years. And really, when it comes to historical artifacts, I'm of the mindset, and somebody feel free to disagree with me if they like.
Here we go.
It really needs to be managed by the government. And I don't know, so for instance, the county manages ours. So I'm an advocate for either the province or the city or the county or the federal government, whoever, but there has to be some type of consistent funding there and strategies put towards that, because it's very important. These things become these artifacts become priceless, essentially. And I mean, things do, and so it is important to have that structure in place. Now, the city, I talk to people all the time. They want to give us their stuff, and we say to them, listen, I have no capacity. Like, I've got an attic that I've got some stuff in, and my wife says, listen, we're full. So I have taken some things, and we say to them, like, you're going to have to go to the county. And a lot of people do say, well, we don't want it to leave Sarnia. And that's what happens. It leaves Sarnia. It goes out to Grand Bend. And I'm not saying that out in Grand Bend they do a bad job. They actually do a fantastic job. They put a lot of money in there, but it is in Grand Bend, and that, for some people that's a sticking point. And my argument is, like, they're going to take care of it, and it's not to say that it may always be in Grand Bend. And I've talked to the new director in the county that manages that now, and he has a mindset that he wants to do something in Sarnia. He wants to use existing facilities like they have, like the library,
Right.
make that happen. And in my talks with him, there's been positive talks about that. And I think that's a great first step, But at the end of the day, the people have to realize that they're going to have to spend money on this, right? Like, I know that there's this mindset of that's a waste of money, and there's people that feel that way. But the truth is, it's going to have to come from the public coffers to get it done. And so you just have to ask yourself, as a community, are you willing to do that? And I think as more people go on these walking tours and they start understanding and respecting their history and understanding how grand Sarnia is, I think there's going to be more of an appetite for somebody being bold and saying it's time to have a museum here.
Yeah, well, and it's a good point of having the tour and I guess creating that understanding and the importance of it, and more people are. I don't know that everybody's aware, right? But I mean, when you tell me that you've got a list of 900 people on a newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we live in a county of 73,000. It's like, come on, we want some more people out there, right? I mean, 900 is a lot. Don't get me wrong. I'm not putting that down, but there's still a stretch to go there. And I think our governments, are they supportive?
Well, I think governments are supportive of what the people want. So at the end of the day, I think the government's a moot point. I mean, I think you look at like what they've done with the military in Ottawa and some of the things that they've done for their historical tours and preserve that history. It's beautiful. And, I'll even give a shout out to Plimpton, Wyoming. They have a fantastic museum.
They do.
The honor of going out there just earlier this year. Don Poland at the time was running operations out there, and he's just done a fantastic job out there. I know there's a whole crew, and I apologize to them that are listening that are out there, but they are doing some fantastic things. And they're small and they're mighty, but they were able to get some space, and they got a lot of volunteers that really care about it, and they're doing their thing out there. So
and Moortown, right?
Moortown has a museum.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's good. It's great to see. I really, in my lifetime, I'd love to see something for Sarnia, and I believe that something will happen.
Fantastic. Well, Ron, I've taken up about almost a half an hour of your time, and I know you've got a little one around the house somewhere that you probably need to.
Just got back from the beach. She's having a little nap right now. But Dave, I just want to say to you, like, kudos to what you're doing. I've been watching you do your thing over the last few years, and you're really building this thing up too. The fact that I'm sitting in my living room right now, last time you had to come to me in my living room, and now you're doing this thing. I think it's fantastic. You're doing a great job for our community. Like, you're educating the masses, and that's what it's all about, right? Like, a lot of people just don't know what's going on in this community, and folks like yourself and others are really doing a good job at highlighting what people are doing in their efforts. So I commend you for telling the story of Sarnia.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. It's my pleasure. And I've lived in Sarnia all my life. I never left. I've never had a reason to leave because there's just so much greatness going on here. And most people probably don't know just what a history buff I am as far as around here goes and stuff. So I appreciate the efforts that the Historical Society and the Heritage Committee do to encourage. And I guess if there's somebody in the community that would have an idea or something to do, that they could approach the Historical Society or the committee.
Yeah. We do collaborations with people all the time. They come to us and they go, "Hey, I've got this idea." And I'd be like, "Well, what can we do for you?" Let's take your idea and make it into action, But, we're a volunteer operation. And so that's the way it is. We volunteer our time, and that's what we do.
Awesome. Thanks again, Ron RealeSmith. I know I'll be seeing you around town somewhere, and
yes.
Appreciate your time. And go get yourself a little nap while you can.
All right, take care. Thanks so much. Have a great night.
All right, you're welcome. Ron RealeSmith, part of the Sarnia Historical Society and the Sarnia Heritage Committee, and there really is so much going on in this community. With history, we talk a lot about entertainment and things to do, and this one's free. Well, it's going to happen on Wednesday, August the 21st. You can go down to Sarnia City Hall and gather there at 6:30 in the evening. It is free. However, they're asking if you can to make at least a $5 donation. which supports what they're trying to do here in Sarnia Lambton. It's fantastic. So thanks again, Ron RealeSmith. And thanks to all of you. And this new series of being on my Facebook page on the show with David Burrows, you're going to see a lot more of Community Matters. If you've got something that's important to you, if you've got some kind of an issue and you want to talk about it, but we're looking for the positive. If you got something you want to share and you want to join me here, I'm not hard to find. Just reach out to me on Facebook. I'd love to hear what you'd like to share with our community. But for now, that's it for this edition of Community Matters. Until next time, we'll see you around the block.